computer. Cool. All right, so we're going to start creating a website, some of the basics of content management. A lot of this is vocabulary, so I'll skip through this. I do tend to use text-heavy slides, knowing that, whoops, sorry, Acrobat's not happy today. Knowing that it can be helpful to refer back to when you are looking at a slide deck. So there's too much text on here. If it were just you looking at this now, I don't expect you to read the whole thing. But basically, 80% of all job roles will require digital competencies, and content management system skills are one of the most in-demand skills. And generally, most roles, it used to be that if you had a job, there was someone in your office who provided help with loading content onto your website. Nowadays, we have web developers, we have web design teams, but in a lot of cases, we're going to be putting our own content on websites regardless of the role we have. And so growing these skills can help make you more competitive in the job market. And I do have children, and they will be interrupting this presentation. It is something I can't avoid unless I invested in cages, and we're not there yet. George, give that back when you're done. Wow, I'm glad this is being recorded because I have proof, number one, that they interrupt me, and proof that I'm a bad parent because he is drinking Diet Mountain Dew. All right, so content management systems, or a CMS, is basically just a tool that helps you edit and manage a website. It used to be that you could make a website, and you still can, straight from HTML, so scripting it, or CSS, and there were many tools that help you do that. But nowadays, most of us are using systems that write the HTML for us, and we don't even need to know how it works in order to do that. We'll talk a little bit about the advantage of knowing some of it. But the basics of HTML and CSS are those are the scripts. That is a language that controls how a web browser behaves and how it looks. CSS in particular, sorry, that's going to blink on and off. I never know where to put this, refers to language that deals with formatting and fonts, you know, so how it looks versus HTML, which is what's, where, why, and how, and then how do they behave. A few key terms, you probably know all these. I mean, people, this is stuff that I had to learn over my lifetime, but most of you know this. The domain name is just whatever comes after the www. So in some cases, you will purchase a domain name, but not hosting for your site, right? Maybe you own the www.yourname.com, and then that sends you or readdresses to a free site on Wix or a free site on another host. The URL is the complete web address, which will send you to a particular website. That's just the tool that you need to link back and forth. And then the website itself is where the site is hosted and what content is on the site. So when I'm working with students who are creating their own websites, in some cases they buy the domain, in other cases they don't worry about the domain while they're building it. And then after they built it, they might buy a domain that sends us back to a free site, or you might pay for hosting on a tool like Squarespace or something like that, where you buy the domain and the hosting. So it kind of depends on how much you want to spend and what you want to do with it. In terms of the different kinds of content management systems, we're going to really focus on Wix because it's the easiest entry point for content management systems. But there are a lot of different tools. At DePaul, they use SharePoint, which isn't even on this list. A lot of other universities use Drupal. That's a pretty common one for nonprofit institutions. This whole list links out to all the others. I'm sure you've heard podcasts or radio ads for Squarespace. Maybe 3-4 years ago, I would say Squarespace had significantly better templates and other tools. I think Wix has actually done a really good job of catching up to Squarespace and has more free options. That being said, I host my website on Squarespace because I like their tools and I'm paying for their hosting. But you should look into these, decide which one works best for you. Let me quickly make this smaller. Weebly is another competitor of Wix. I don't think it's caught up as much, but this could change overnight. And then WordPress is a very popular content management system that's worth looking into, particularly if you're comfortable with different kinds of skills. So we'll dip into WordPress if we have time. I would say for the entry-level person, Wix is the easiest starting point. WordPress is a little more advanced, but WordPress also has a lot of other functions it can offer. So we're not gonna, commit to one over the other. So let's get into a sneak preview of Wix. This is what Wix looks like when you dip into it. I'm gonna go into the dashboard just to show you what I mean by WYSIWYG. Let me just confirm. Can you guys see this Wix? Give me a thumbs up if you can see the Wix site. I'm sharing the screen. I think I'm sharing my whole desktop. Okay, fabulous. So let's just move the chat over here. So what you can see here is this is a test DePaul site I created on Wix. I used my Google account. I actually used my DePaul.edu to create this. I haven't paid a dime for any of this. Do I get ads every day to buy the site? Yes, I do. That is a small price to pay for a free site. But this is a great, if you just want to learn a little bit of this and play with what it might look like, you get to do that. Now, I skipped a lot of steps to get here. I'm already a quarter into building this because it'll ask me right at the top, it asks me what kind of site, what kind of templates, etc. But I'm just going to show you what it looks like. If I go into edit site, I'm going to show you what the builder looks like. And again, this is a WYSIWYG. So what you see is what you get, meaning there's a lot of drag and drop. There's a lot of features where I can just upload an image and it's going to write the HTML or the CSS or the script for me in the background without me having to do it. All right, so this is ugly as heck, but this is just a good example of, I picked this template. I have not replaced any of these images. I'm literally going into some of these boxes. You can see on the left, nav. I have a lot of different options about, in terms of, am I bolding this? What size is it? Is this a hyperlink? You can see it's basically menu navigation. So I can go into here and add a phone number, a lot of information on the header. Then when I get into here, I have a special edit button. I click on here, and then I can replace this image. Let's go from, I can actually go from a gallery that Wix provides. I'm actually, and I can change the media layout here. Right now it's in strip. I can change it to background. I'm just gonna upload an image. I'm gonna click on replace. And it will then let me take from a bunch of images it's collected that work with this template well, or I can upload my own, or I can go to Unsplash. And Unsplash to me is the, I mean, I like Shutterstock, but I think Unsplash has the best selection of copyright-free images. But you will, these are images that other people could be using on their site, so you do want to think about that. You can also upload your own media here. If you maybe download one of these from Unsplash and then you tweak it, maybe you put a filter on it, you do whatever it is. I'm just going to click this one because I want to see what it does to a portrait style image. Sorry, I have too many things open. So then I can adjust it. That actually doesn't look that bad. But it's pretty clear from the menu directions exactly how you can edit on here. You can see there's a ton of filters already in Wix for me to play with. Let's just do the neon one. I can crop and resize. So maybe I do want it to be a little more horizontal. Crop ratio, yeah, let's do free. And then is it gonna let me drag? Oh, it wants me, oh, I see. Okay, great. So I can actually crop and change it to landscape mode. Let's say save. I mean, this is really different from how things used to work 10 years ago in terms of creating sites. I could also just get rid of some sections. So if I wanted to move this image up or make this a background, I could probably mess around with these settings in here. And then this is the nav right now on the top. So I can click on site menu and I can entirely edit the navigation. Now, in terms of making decisions about what needs to be on here, I have a very important pro tip to make this easy. The pro tip is get into Google, our best friend, type in the word Muse best personal websites. For whatever reason, the Muse does a great job of collecting many, many different samples. And why recreate the wheel when you can just look at other people's websites to get a good idea? The Muse has constantly got these updated lists. Let me see what this is. They don't always date these, so there are trends that go in and out. So you might, if you get into one of these articles, let me quickly see if it gives us a date on this one. It doesn't. So I actually don't know when this was posted. And sometimes it'll be like designers' websites, animators' websites. But I love really collecting inspiration from other people's personal websites and then saying, you know what, I love this nav. This is the nav I'm going to use, rather than me really overthinking, like, how should I make this look, or what should my navigation be? Now, some of these sites will be maybe beyond what you even want to do. Like, this is an author, so I don't know that I need to have all of these sections. So browse for someone who's doing something the way you would like to do it. If you're in a particular business, like I was recently working with a commercial or a portrait photographer, and I was like, find 5 great portrait photographer sites and do what one of them does, or a hybrid of what they all do. Because that's going to give you the best idea of what you can do. Now you can see this person, their nav is just home, services, about, and contact. So depending on this is an artist. So this is the basics. If you're not an artist and you want to play with a personal website, find an up and coming professional who's got a great website. One of my favorite ones, I should have prepped this, but I didn't. There's this gal, and I never know her name, so give me a minute. There's this company, or there's this group in Chicago called the United States of Artists. They do artist grants. And I'd like to use this gal's, I'm going to find her real quick, her personal website as an example of how minimal you can be to have a functioning website. Because the website is really a place for yourself to collect all your socials in one space and have control over a brand in a way you don't on LinkedIn. Should you have this instead of a LinkedIn? Absolutely not. You need to have a LinkedIn as well. It has a different purpose. I'm just going to pull this gal's name. I never remember how to spell it. Dina Hagag. I probably am not saying it this correctly. So I'm going to show you her personal site. It's my favorite as far as like, don't overthink what needs to be on here. We'll go to her site. She's an arts administrator, so her goal is to look pretty cool. You can see her site, literally, this is the homepage. She's got her socials up here, and then about and press. 2 sections. She doesn't need more. Her about is just a gorgeous little bio. Boom. If I need to know more about her work history, I'm just going to navigate over to her LinkedIn. If you ever see a site and you're wondering how they made it, which tool they used, you can go right into View Developer, and then if your computer's not really slow, View Source, and you can often see if it was made with Wix or Squarespace. So I can see right here quickly, Squarespace. So if I'm curious how someone made a site, I've done a little bit of HTML, so I know to look for in source, but if you just do source, you can look quickly to see, does it say Wix or Squarespace or WordPress? And that'll just give you a sense of how they made that site. That's more than you need to know about looking at those. So we dipped into Wix just to show you. Just quickly, the free version of, like I said, I have the free version. I have not published my site. Now, when you decide to publish your site, you do need to either accept ads for the free version, buy a domain, or don't buy a domain. You don't have to. You can see all of these paid versions include a custom domain. So do not buy a domain if you know you're going to pay for hosting. Because if you're going to pay for hosting, you're going to get a free domain name. If you think you're not going to pay for hosting and you're always going to do the free hosting with ads, then go ahead and buy a domain if you want one to readdress. Does that make sense? Anybody not understand what readdress is? Let me open that chat again just in case. Readdress is just, yeah, so readdress is where you buy, I'll even show you a good example. Let's see if it still works. My husband's in advertising and we're old. So the rules were different. Yeah.
Excuse me. Also, when you finish that, could you repeat what you mentioned about the domain versus the hosting? Don't buy one if you're going to do something else. Yes. Sorry.
No, no problem. Thank you. I talk really, 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 really fast. And this is probably my 5th Diet Mountain Dew. So you're really going to have to slow me down. All right. So my husband bought the domain name ConNewton.com. That's his name. He paid for that. If you want to figure out where to buy your domain name, that's the cheapest. Really look on Reddit. This changes overnight. GoDaddy, everyone hates GoDaddy for a million different reasons. So Google, I bought a domain on Google Domain. I trust them, but if you look on Reddit, you'll figure out where to buy the domain. So the domain is just whatever it is .com. Your name, cool guy, whatever it is. My husband bought that, but he has it readdresses, meaning when he buys a domain name, he tells that domain to send people to this URL, cargocollective.com/ConNewton, because he got free hosting on this site. Cargo Collective is no longer, course I'm getting calls during this. Cargo Collective is no longer offering free hosting, but there are plenty of sites like Wix where you can have free hosting with ads, where you would only buy the domain if you want it on your website, if you want it on LinkedIn to say like myname.com or architect.com or whatever it is. The domain you can buy separately, but if you are going to pay for hosting, like I pay for hosting on Squarespace. This is going to be embarrassing. I'm sure I have not updated this in forever. Oh, it's going to be bad. I apologize. I really need to update this. Okay, so don't go into this site. Let me tell you, I have not updated this in long enough. But this is my Squarespace site. I paid for hosting for this site rather than having ads on Wix or something else. I just did a whole package on Squarespace. It was easier for me. I got my domain name for free because I signed up for a year of hosting. So that's what I'll say. Don't pay for a domain name if you're gonna pay for hosting. If you're not gonna pay for hosting, but you want a domain name, go ahead and pay for it. It is not gonna cost you a lot. A domain name should not cost you more than $10 to $15 a year. But then again, that's why I say, every time someone asks me where to buy a domain name, I do a quick Reddit, where should I buy a domain? The nerds at Reddit always know where the best domains are able to be purchased.
And I have a question too. I know that some places where you can buy the domain also grants hosting once you purchase that for the year.
Yeah.
So in that case, you would be, like the what is it, GoDaddy or whatever.
Yeah.
Like you would be okay in that case, just with the one purchase because
Yes.
it has a hosting mechanism within it.
Yeah, it's usually they'll give you the domain free if you pay for hosting.
Oh, got it. Okay.
So it's usually the hosting they're trying to sell because they get more money out of you for hosting. GoDaddy, Reddit hates GoDaddy. There's a lot of reasons. Some of them are political. As far as hosting goes, Google offers hosting. One thing I do know is if you search to see if your domain name is available on GoDaddy, they have a history of buying those and then selling them back to you at a higher price. So if you're going to search to see if your domain that you want is available, then don't do it on GoDaddy, but you can do it on Google. But like I said, this changes overnight in terms of who has the best deal, who doesn't have the best deal. Do your research, don't get scammed, don't pay too much for hosting. And then if you don't need hosting right now, there's nothing wrong with building a Wix site and deciding for yourself, okay, I'll publish, now I'm gonna get hosting here or hosting here. Wix is reasonably priced. I do Squarespace because when I made the site, Squarespace had significantly better templates. Wix's templates have improved a lot. So that's why I included their pricing model. It was a screenshot from the summer. There might be better deals. There might be education deals that I don't know about. Don't pay for hosting until you're really ready. Because you could have a free Wix site forever that you just either readdress to, or you just send people to, myname@wix.com. That's not necessarily a bad thing. We don't want you to invest a ton of money into this until you're ready to go. And if you don't need things like, 35 gig or shopping carts or any of this other stuff, you can go with the basic plan. And WordPress is also, you can see this price model on WordPress. You can see this is even cheaper for the paid version. They also have a free version. What you need to do before you decide between any of these is decide which one do you enjoy editing more. Because if you do not enjoy editing it, you will not keep it up to date. In my opinion, WordPress is a step up from Wix in difficulty. Let's see if we can get in here. I didn't open this one in advance. Does this have, which one hyperlinks? Come on. Here we go. This one? Oh, I'm not presenting. That's why the links don't work. Sorry. Okay. So this is what the menu looks like when you're in WordPress and making a site. Again, you start by choosing from a template. Let's hope this opens up. Let's log in. I think I just have this attached to my, to Paul. Hopefully, should have logged into this one at first. So many emails. So you'll see WordPress pop up though as a preferred job skill. You'll see content management pop up as a preferred job skill in job postings. If you know how to if you play with Wix for 2 hours and you're like, I can get this, go ahead and put Wix on your resume. Because if you can do Wix, you can do any of the content management systems. They all have a little bit different of a menu, but let's get into, okay, so I'm in Wix. What am I in? I'm in Reader. I don't know why I'm in here. My site. Okay. So it looks a little bit different from Wix. Let me get into, I'm on the free plan. Here are my pages. You can tell already it's a little bit different. Like if I were teaching myself WordPress, I don't know that I would dip in right away. I might watch a quick LinkedIn video on it first so that I did things in the right order. But if I can let's go to design, customize. It is also a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get in terms of being able to move things around. It's just a little, you kind of have to know what they mean by widgets, adding a widget. You know, I would have to train myself a little bit more because I've been using simpler ones, but this is worthwhile learning, particularly because WordPress is, if you see it in a couple job apps in your area of interest, teach yourself WordPress. Give yourself a little bit of time to play with it. If you put a skill on your resume, you are not saying you have portfolio level skills. You are just getting through an applicant tracking system. And that's our whole goal with this skills lab, is to talk to you about how you can upskill. If you find an in-demand skill and you want to grow it, you can grow it enough to put on your resume to get through that applicant tracking system. If they want advanced skills on any of this, they're going to ask for portfolios. If they have preferred knowledge of WordPress, give yourself an hour to dip into WordPress, then put WordPress on your resume. And I'm going to show you a resume optimizer that's kind of the culmination of all this upskilling. So that's just a little bit about Wix. I'm not going to really do a huge testimonial on HTML, but if you decide you want to learn a little bit of it, it's actually wildly easy to teach yourself, if only by going into a free online editing tool. So this shows you exactly what HTML would be created with language. So if I put in, let me put in a insert image. This is a lot like D2L when you're putting stuff in D2L, only this is actually going to show me, oh, here, I'm just going to grab an image. Open link in new tab. Oh, I didn't want the link. I want the image in new tab. Okay, so if I have a URL of an image and I just want to see what that HTML looks like, I already have no idea where I'm at. Okay, I'm going to put it right here. Okay. So it put the image here, and see how it wrote all this HTML? I can't see the image, so I don't know what the heck I did wrong. But you can see that these, if you're playing on the back end, this is next level. But if you're playing on the back end, you can see a little bit of, okay, this is telling me the width and height. Maybe I want to make this width 600 and I want to make this height 300. This is kind of how I control on the back end. But this is advanced. I don't really want to spend a ton of time on upskilling on HTML, but this is in the slide deck. Here are some ways to upskill on everything else though. Wix has its own tutorials. WordPress has its own tutorials. If you're a current DePaul student, you have access for free to LinkedIn Learning courses, some of which are only an hour. And maybe you don't need more than that. Quickly, last thing I want to make sure you know about. Let me get in here. Let me get in here. Okay. I'm going to open up my resume for you, and I'm going to show you the coolest thing ever. Okay. I'm going to also move. I know I have 1,000 tabs. It's a real problem. Where's my resume optimizer? Okay. So the reason we're so focused on skills in the Career Center is that 95% of jobs go through an applicant tracking system that is looking for skills keywords, right? Put in the chat what percentage of skills, what percentage of resumes get looked at after going through an applicant tracking system. Go ahead and put in the chat. What percentage do you think get looked at? All right, I already have a plan. It's true. Only 30% get looked at by the human eye because the rest get thrown in the trash can because they don't have the skills, right? So this is why we're talking about upskilling. Watch this. I'm copying and pasting my whole resume, which is 2 pages, but I'm old, okay? Let me just put that out there. Just because you see me putting a 2-page resume in here doesn't mean most people should have a 2-page resume. I'm old and I work in higher ed. Okay, so I copied and pasted my whole resume into here. I don't care what the formatting looks like. Watch what this does. Boom, it underlined every skill word it found in here. So this will give you a sense of what skills is the applicant tracking system finding. It gets better. So it said it found 47. I hope so. I work in a career center. I better be good at this. Watch me pick a job title. This optimizer is free, by the way. I'm going to throw the link real quick in the chat, but I'll send it in the email. I'm going to put in a job title. I'm just going to do social media intern. It is now, this optimizer pulls data from job postings and actual LinkedIn profiles, so both of those, to create a list of skills that are important for every role. So what it's doing right now is it's going to tell me what skills I have that are important to the social media intern role and what skills I need to add to my resume. I've never seen it take this long. I might have to pick a different one. The LinkedIn Learning, I'll send that link, but I'll show you really quickly. Okay, I don't know why that one's taking so long. Let me try Media Planner. It might be that my computer's just angry with me for having so many tabs. Yeah, it's not even letting me select. Come on. So if you want to save the chat, that'll give you that link I just posted in there. Let me actually show you really quickly while that's loading. LinkedIn Learning DePaul. Okay, so I do see a question, submit resumes via Word instead of PDF. I actually think PDF is safer than Word. But what I can do is before I send this follow-up email to you guys, I will check with my other colleagues to see if they've heard the same thing. And what you might want to do is really open a resume in PDF and see if the text is selectable, because that'll tell you whether or not the applicant tracking system can find it. Word to me is high risk because it's all about the versions, right? Which version is it? Do they have that version? Word, and I'm on a Mac, so Word really doesn't like opening on my Mac. So I think PDFs are safer, but I will, there's also often an option to do it both ways. So you can often attach 2 documents, but I will check with my colleagues. All right, so I'm gonna try a different one. All right, I don't know why it's not loading that one, but let's go to Media Planner. All right, so you can see, you throw your resume in here and then all of a sudden it tells you, okay, I have 14 of the key skills that are necessary for this role. I have 13 relevant skills and 20 unusual, which makes sense because I have a weird job. And then it's telling me, this is what I get really excited about. I need these keywords on here somewhere. I can put them in my accomplishment statements. I can put them in a skills section, but I could also put them in a summary. And I'll show you a summary really quickly. But first, let me point one thing out. It says I don't know Photoshop. Watch this. I have a technology section and I know Adobe Creative Cloud. What does this tell you? It's important to use parenthetically the names of the programs. Okay, so you might have Microsoft Office on your resume, but do you have Word, Outlook, Excel, or PowerPoint? Because you don't know if it's looking for Office or PowerPoint. I have Adobe Creative Cloud on here. It thinks I don't know Photoshop because I didn't put Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator. So that's how important skills are. I use parentheticals in a technology section to talk about technology, and I know I'm running late, but let me show you really quickly what I was talking about in terms of resume summaries. This is a new handout and I will send it to you guys as part of my follow-up, but I use a summary. You can see at the top of my resume, let me go back up top. I use a summary. This is my summary. Let me see if I can make it bigger. Arts and education professional with 20 years of leadership experience in creative learning experience design. So basically I use a summary to get skills right at the top. And then if I'm a HR screener and I'm looking at this for 6 seconds, I then go down and find evidence of this. But I've already told you right at the top, you've got in 6 seconds what I need you to know. Now that's really long. The samples I have here, you can see this one is game design professional with expertise in story and gameplay structure, passionate about this. Designer and illustrator with experience in marketing, da, da, da. I'm getting skills and keywords in my summary. So I see a question, would you say you have more than one for different purposes? Yeah, I would have a resume for every type of role you're applying to, even if you just change the summary. Or the other thing you'll change are, and I can't do this here, what you call the experience sections. So this experience section, I'm not going to do this for real, but I could call this marketing experience. I mean, I can't because I do a little marketing, but you could have a marketing experience section on a resume for that, but in another world, you might call this operations for a different role. So it's not that you need to have 50 different resumes, but I would have one tailored for each kind of role you're looking for that really highlights the structures. If I would the system pick up? No, the system almost exclusively scans resumes. I would not trust it to scan a cover letter. So in terms of getting through the applicant tracking system, think of it in layers. The first layer is resume only. If they're looking at your cover letter, you've already made it that far. But at the same time, that's why we got to front load that cover letter with the content we want it to have. But that does make the resume in some way more important than the cover letter, because if the resume doesn't work, they're never going to read the cover letter. And they literally spend 6 seconds on average with the resume, which is why for me, I love a summary. And you can see some other examples that I'll send you in the follow-up. They're not just for artists, they're also for mental health professionals. Like you get that right at the top and you get to say what, and then the cover letter pairs with that. In our career library, we have a cover letter handout that has a really specific formula for how to structure your cover letter. But that is tailored the same way the summary is tailored in your resume. And so then from a project management perspective, you're not spending an hour on every application, right? Especially if you have a spreadsheet where you're tracking these things and you're like, oh, I'm going to use this resume and cover letter from that previous role because I tailored it for a social media role. And I'm going to use the next role I'm going to use is the one I tailored for an editing role, right? So you should label these as you're doing them. We have a handout on how to project manage a job search, and we do have a workshop exclusively on project managing the job and internship search coming up. What other questions do you guys have for me about websites, content management, all that stuff? Anything else I can cover? This is really a skill commercial, but what else do you have questions about? Will I include any documentation? Yeah, I will. I have some links for you guys. WordPress has its own tutorials. Wix has its own tutorials. I'll include a couple like YouTube. Like if you're an alum and you don't have access to LinkedIn Learning through DePaul for free, there's definitely plenty of training on YouTube. Like I would not spend any money on learning any of these tools. I would literally look up and then sort by most recently posted or most views, you know, how to learn Wix in an hour and then teach myself through that. Other questions?
Yeah, would you say that people like, okay, so I'll always say I'm in graphic design and they're like, oh, do you know how to like design, like do web design? And I'm like, that's not the same thing. But it is, it's like not, but it is. Would you say people want Wix or they want WordPress or do they want both?
That's a good question. If it's a portfolio, it doesn't really matter how you made it. I think that I'm surprised at how much I see WordPress, but I don't think I'm going to see it for much longer. Although the WordPress users are a passionate people. But I see it phasing out in favor of even more user-friendly tools. But that would be something, whenever I really need up-to-date information, I literally will Google Reddit, which is better, da, da, da. And I say what you will about Reddit. I'm not endorsing everything on that site. But there's a lot of people who have opinions about this. What I would do for yourself, do a scan on Indeed, not specific to Chicago, for jobs that you would want to apply to anywhere and see which comes up more. I mean, you're never going to see Wix. You're going to see web editing versus Wix itself, because Wix and Weebly and Squarespace, they're the same thing, right? They're just packaged differently. WordPress is just a little bit different. But if you see WordPress popping up enough, here's what I'll say to you. Don't invest a ton of time. Play with it for an hour, put on your resume, call it done. Because you know, you get in that job, you're going to be Googling, how do I do this anyway? Like, that's what's going to happen. I have never taken a class on any of this. I just have taught myself how to do things when I needed to. So I would just make sure, don't count yourself out if you don't have expert level knowledge, because that's not the knowledge economy we're working with. It's really more that you can teach yourself a new tool. Does that make sense? Tools that are being used instead of WordPress, there's a lot of tools institutionally, like companies. DePaul uses SharePoint, which is gross. Drupal's way better. There's a million different suppliers of web content management. Companies aren't, persons are using Wix, people are using Squarespace, but most companies are using their own proprietary system that is one of those basics. Like SharePoint is a lot like Drupal. They're not that different. You will not go into a role with an expectation that you know that one tool. But if you've done anything in Wix, if you've done anything in Squarespace, if you've done anything in WordPress, that's transferable knowledge to know how to use any content management system, which is why we talk about it in that way, as opposed to like knowing Wix. I care more that you know a content management system. And web design, because web design used to mean programming. Now it means sliding a graphic here, putting text up here. It doesn't mean programming the way it did before. Yeah, I'll throw my email in here if you have any questions. Oh, Schneike, I'm so glad you did that. I didn't do this last time. I have a quick poll. Oh, thank goodness for you guys still here. We're really conscious about trying to assess what we're doing. What am I doing? And I don't even see my poll. Give me 1 second. Am I still sharing my screen? I have, okay. And now I can't. Guys, where's my stop screen share? Technical difficulties. Okay, there we go. Stop share real quick. And then I'm gonna have you guys do a quick checkout poll. Oof, thank goodness I remembered to do this. I forgot to do this last Thursday. So if you could, it's anonymous. We're just collecting responses to this. And then I will throw my email in here. Thank you for reminding me on accident. I know it should be an hour, but we want this to be a skill commercial. But if you guys have other ideas, we have a whole calendar of these. If you have other ideas for other kinds of tools you would like to use, it's not just technology. We did one last week on designing high impact presentations. We've got one coming on SEO. We've got one on project management tools, remote technology tools, all kinds of good stuff. So if you have ideas, let me know. I threw my email in there. I'm semi good at replying to emails, so follow up if I don't get back to you. But thanks for coming. We have a lot of stuff. If you have any other questions, just throw it in the chat. I'm going to stop recording for now, but let me know if you have other questions.